of the grim things that I read in the book is that toppling a tyrant is no guarantee that the country is going to do well. And the statistics are overwhelmingly against this conception that, you get a dictator down, things will run on autopilot. It has almost rarely happened.
Yeah, so again, there's a structural element here. So one of the things that dictators tend to do is to destroy the institutions within their country. And they don't like institutions because these institutions are constraints. So you don't want to have a functioning court system. You don't want to have an independent civil service. You don't want to have any of that. So you try to destroy them as much as you possibly can. And like you said, oftentimes these people are in power for a long time. So if you have 3 decades, you can destroy a lot of stuff. So at that moment, when the dictator then goes because he dies or he's toppled, oftentimes there's no real mechanism to even organize succession. And all of a sudden, you're left in a scenario where, the whole thing could go up completely in flames. There might be civil war, there might be another dictatorship and so forth. So yes, oftentimes personalist dictatorships are just followed by more dictatorships. And another element to this are the interests of the regime elites. So if you are one of these advisors or you're one of these generals or intelligence officials, what you care about is not so much the individual dictator, but the survival of the regime itself, because it's the regime that gives you your power and the regime that gives you your money. So when the dictator falls asleep, you're not going to be pushing for a democracy because democracy is diametrically opposed to your interests. What you want is another dictator because that is the way to ensure that money keeps flowing.
Yeah, and the stats, just for the listeners, you write you've got 20% of fallen autocratic leaders from 1950 to 2012 were followed by a democracy, just 1/5. And again, to quote you, barely 1 in 10 U.S. regime change operations over a century ended up in democracy.